Does Manchester United signing Ugarte make sense? Today we're going to be answering that question. We're going to be talking about Ugarte's time at Sporting Lisbon and PSG, but also how he'll fit in, adapt to Erik ten Hag's football. I'm Statman Dave, of course. If you are new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like the video. But anyway, let's get this party started. Of course, Sporting set up with a 3 at the back, 4 in midfield and 2 forwards off a striker. Very mobile, very flexible in the final third, but they press super high. The forwards would get involved in the pressure, and then it would especially come from central midfield. How Sporting would usually operate is the back 3 would usually take the the offensive players, the 10 and the number 9, allowing the 2 central midfielders to really jump high and squeeze. That perfectly was suited to Ugarte's game, who's fantastic when the ball is played into those midfield areas at closing the space down. He's very good at covering that little short distance and putting the pressure on instantly, either looking to directly win the tackle or alternatively forcing the opposition, to ship the ball back into a, deeper area. Again, the press can come in. Not only is Ugarte very good at closing that kind of space down and shutting the space in a pressing moment, but he's good as well when the ball's played, let's say, into that central midfield area, at following his own pressure. He'll jump on the number 6 if the 6 shifts it to the 11 or maybe back to the 3. Ugarte will follow his own press and win the ball back. This is something that Manchester United have really lacked, a good presser in central midfield, and that's exactly what Ugarte would do. Think of him a little bit like a Gattuso, a terrier, a guy that's going to go and win multiple tackles in one bit of defensive play, but also have the defensive awareness. Let's say if the opposition were building on the other side and Morita was the more aggressive central midfielder, given the ball's going to get played into the number 8, Ugarte is very good at kind of sweeping and closing off those passing lanes. It reacts very well to his teammates' movement, even in very, very, very quick moments where they're closing on a flank and the central midfielder to the left of him jumps late. Ugarte is really tactically aware, knowing that he needs to sit at that time. But just in terms of this kind of moment in the intercepting, as soon as the number 8, let's say he's got himself turned, Morita's not got the press on the ball well enough, and let's say it's fired into the number 10, Ugarte is very good at reading those passes. He reads it early, he reads it well, he's got that good awareness around him of where the opposition as well, constantly checking his shoulders. It's something that we speak frequently about players in possession. What I noticed with Ugarte, he's very good at doing that from a defensive perspective. He's very good at focusing on the ball, getting his footwork right so his body shape's good, knowing where the number 10 is, and then stepping in and making that interception. Why that was really good for Sporting Lisbon, not only can he win in that kind of first phase tackle on it in a pressing situation, but he can clean up in front of the back 4 that will lead to dangerous counter-attacks. Similar to Manchester United being kind of transitional under Erik ten Hag, Sporting Club de Portugal are very good in transition under Amorim, and Ugarte would win the ball back, Sporting would break with their 2 wing-backs and create really good attacking situations. But just adding a little bit more to his game, we spoke about off the ball, super aggressive, good at reading the play, pretty decent penalty box defender as well. We'll speak a little bit more about that later on at Manchester United, but a good penalty box defender, especially when it comes to intercepting the ball, and cutbacks have been a big issue for Manchester United. But as Sporting attacked, Ugarte was the deeper midfielder, more of the pivot 6, but not a pivot 6 that's going to get on the ball, that's going to control the tempo, that's going to spread the play. Almost a safe option, a player that if Sporting need to go back to, is simply going to play one touch, play to either centre-back, play to his midfield partner, but retain possession. But interestingly as well, from a kind of pressing perspective or a counter-pressing perspective, Ugarte becomes alive in those moments. Imagine Gattuso at AC Milan. As soon as possession's lost, it's dropped into midfield. Ugarte is the first one on it. His reactions to losing the ball are very, very good. I mentioned his speed, his mobility, which also helps out, but mentally he's very, very switched on. He's almost waiting for that moment to step the ball back. It's a little bit like Fabinho at Monaco, when watched him before he moved to Liverpool, where he would be the guy that would maintain the attacking structure. He'd win the ball back and then ship it off to one of his teammates quickly. Ugarte has done a very similar thing at Sporting and, of course, at PSG as well. So we've looked at his aggression off the ball, his ability to read the play, to squeeze, what he does when, his team is attacking in this 3-4-3 shape. But also from a progression perspective, Sporting Lisbon very much build with their 2 outside centre-backs. They're the main ball progressors. They play the passes either to the players in between the lines, or they go wide to the wing-back. In terms of what Sporting need from that defensive midfield position with Hulmand or with Ugarte, is very much a player just to retain possession. A player that's going to get the ball into feet, that's going to drop it either way, but it's going to retain. What you'd see with Ugarte is maybe the ball from Diamande inside, he'd drop it back to Coates, and Coates played it to Ignacio, and then Ignacio would play that pass in between the lines. Ugarte is a retainer, a player that's going to have a high pass accuracy, that's going to use the ball 1-2 touch. Ugarte is much better when the ball's been played quickly. When you're looking at these kind of fast passing combinations between a midfield line, Ugarte is top at that. When he's got a little bit more time to think, less effective. So United need to keep a good tempo when building out from the back, but also the progression needs to come from either his central midfield teammate or the two outside centre-backs if Manchester United are building with a back three. More on that later on. Are you a Manchester United fan like me who loves fantasy football but hates picking rival players? Well, I've got the perfect game for you. Manchester United have launched their own fantasy football game, Fantasy United, and we'll be giving away a signed shirt plus VIP tickets to watch United this season. More on that later on. Fantasy United is a blend of fantasy football and a collectible card game where you buy packs of 7 players to build your ultimate fantasy team. The players come with different rarities, from classic to rare to ultra rare, that can score you double or even triple points. In terms of the game itself, you've got to select a lineup of 5 United players for every competitive game. Players are scored on the classic FBL metrics like goals, assists and clean sheets, but there's also bonus points for statistics like chances created, shots on target and tackles. My team for Fulham is shaping up. Unfortunately, we've not got the rare or ultra rare Bruno Fernandes, so he's going to be our first pick in the team. Marcus Rashford and Lisandro Martinez are going to join as our classic players. Our rare player is going to be Diogo Dalot. I think he's got a lot of points potential and clean sheet potential against Fulham. And finally, our ultra rare players with Man United's best player in pre-season, Imad Diallo. Of course, Diogo Dalot is going to score double points and Imad is going to score triple. So come on, the lads, pick up some big points. As a big United fan, I'm going to be playing every single week. If you think you've got what it takes to beat me, join my league, the Statman Dave League. For the month of August, we've got some cracking prizes to give away. A signed shirt, VIP tickets to watch Manchester United. To simply join, click the link in the description below, join the league, and you'll be in with a chance. We're simply going to pick 2 people out at random for the 2 prizes, a signed shirt and 2 VIP tickets. It's so easy. Get involved and see if you can beat me at Fantasy United. Following 2 stellar seasons at Sporting, PSG pounced and signed him for €60 million last summer. Ugarte's looked good and also looked bad for PSG for a number of different reasons. I think the first issue is the defensive midfield position in Luis Enrique's sides requires a real deep-lying playmaker. A player that is going to dictate the play from that base midfield position, that's going to find passes in between the lines to the forwards, that's also going to, retain the ball with his teammates, but also, ship it to fullback, ship it to centre-back, receive back, and then continue to dictate the play. This is not the profile of Ugarte. As we spoke about, Ugarte is a ball-winning midfielder. Vitinha is the perfect player for Luis Enrique because he's a deep-lying playmaker. And that difference saw Ugarte's form fall a little bit short last season, especially playing as a solo pivot. We mentioned previously that Ugarte's strengths are retaining possession. It's playing the short, simple passes when getting pressed by the opposition. But he's not necessarily the guy that's going to dwell on the ball, it's going to take a lot of touches and then find a forward pass. He's a player that is much better when he's under pressure, when he's getting squeezed and he has to react quickly. He has to play that quick pass, then move, then receive again, and then play a simple pass and then move into another position to go. He's just not a deep-lying playmaker. Especially at the back end of the season where Luis Enrique really favoured a single pivot, it didn't suit Ugarte's game. Parts of the game that does suit Ugarte from that position, I think he's a good ball carrier. He's a player that is pretty decent when driving through the opposition's kind of central midfield line from that number 6 area. He's pretty decent as well at switching the play out, especially to that right-hand side, either with direct balls or kind of floated passes out to the fullback. But he's not a player that's going to dictate the play. That's something that Manchester United really need to understand. In terms of the setup that worked at PSG, was actually especially when he played in a double pivot. When PSG threw another one of their attackers in, let's throw Barcola in for argument's sake, we'll take Vitinha out. This was the setup in one of the games against Marseille that I really liked. Vitinha was out the team. It was more of a kind of, front four with Barcola, Muani, Mbappe and Dembele, and Zaire Emery joined him in defensive midfield. Zaire Emery is one hell of a footballer, but he is that guy that's going to get on the ball and going to dictate the play. Not only that, in that setup, in that game, PSG pretty much moved to a back three in possession. You'd see Hakimi either coming inside or overlapping Dembele, dependent on where the winger was. But also the back three was built in a sense that they had players that would progress the play from the outside positions, similar to the setup at Sporting Lisbon. There really needs to be some analysis done in terms of buying a player and then playing him in a completely different role, in a completely different setup, and why it fails. Because in this shape and setup, Ugarte was actually really good. For Marseille, they were playing with a number 10 and 2 forwards. In a sense, they were playing 3 at the back, 2 defensive midfielders, and they were looking to squeeze high up the pitch. But what that meant for Ugarte was he spent a lot of his game basically sitting behind the number 10 as a bit of a decoy. A player that tactically is that good is an asset for any side. And what you'd see is Zaire Emery being the player that's going to get the ball in those deep areas. Zaire Emery made a lot of lateral movement, receiving the ball off Hernandez, and then he would dictate the play, playing higher up the pitch. This is the perfect role for Ugarte, a retainer. He's a player that can receive the ball in tight areas and then maybe play through first time, or receive in tight areas and then go. I think the benefit of having Hakimi as well, playing slightly as an inverted fullback at times and slightly as a natural fullback in other areas, allowed him to have a player to ship to on both sides. So he could play to Zaire Emery, could play to Hakimi, but also get himself turned and play back to those outside centre-backs to allow those to be the guys that break the lines. This is the perfect role for Ugarte. PSG got him completely wrong, especially in that number 6 position. They're giving him a lot of time on the ball to think, again, not using his strengths or skill set. And that's something that United need to know, that with Ugarte in this side, in terms of, I think, the key positions for United in these areas, is that fullback on the right-hand side, but it's also the midfielder that you're playing next to him. Needs to complement him. You need to have players around him that you can ship the ball to, contain the ball to, and then they can play those progressive passes. Key thing for Erik ten Hag. So how will Ugarte fit in at Manchester United? Think of him as the younger Casemiro, a player that's going to get around the pitch, that's going to win tackles, that's going to squeeze high, and have the mobility to play high before dropping low if the play is progressed. He's a player that reacts very, very well to the ball getting played in behind your lines, very quick at getting back and making those tackles or making the interception to win the ball. I think that's going to be a massive asset for Manchester United. When you think about the pace that United have got, especially in those wide areas, but also as a centre forward, Ugarte winning the ball back in those central areas, either through counter pressing or turning the ball over before setting off, let's say, Bruno Fernandes, you're going to get a direct option to goal. Erik ten Hag keeps talking about making Manchester United the best transitional team. With someone like Ugarte, who wins the ball back over 6 times per game with tackles and interceptions, you've got a player that's going to win it, give it to a more creative player, and allow them to feed the strikers and the wingers ahead of him. Ugarte will be an asset for Manchester United in the attacking transitions. But also Ugarte will be very good in those defensive transitions as soon as Manchester United have lost the ball. Him being the first player to put the pressure on, hopefully win the ball back, and then simply, once again, free one of the more attacking players to make Man United even better in those transitional moments. Or alternatively, simply retaining possession, as we previously spoke about, to allow United to maintain attacks. Something that they don't do very well under Erik ten Hag. Too frequently we've seen United's shape being really broken, allowing teams to win the ball back and directly carry through the middle. That's something that Ugarte on his own will simply stop. United will also be much better from a pressing perspective. When you think about the new centre-backs that are coming, let's say Matthias de Ligt to join Martinez at the back, United naturally are going to play more compact. We're probably going to see that defensive 4-4-2 structure a lot more next season, especially with Ruud van Nistelrooy as assistant manager. That's what he had at PSV, and they were very good at stopping the opponents in this mid-block. But now the mid-block looks good. Now United's line is a lot higher. They've actually got aggression in central midfield. They've got a player that's going to be super aggressive if the 6 drops into to pick up the ball deep. They've got a player straight away that's on the back that's going to win tackles high up the pitch and get United goals. United are going from a team that are going to struggle with pressure to a team that really does well well in those moments because of a number of different signings, but Ugarte being that first player to be aggressive in central midfield. I think for Mainu, one of the things that he needs to maybe understand or start to develop a relationship with is allow Ugarte to be more aggressive in these pressing moments. Almost what you want with Mainu is to sit a little bit deeper. If United are going to press in maybe a bit of a diamond structure with two forwards, let's say, when I talk about that diamond structure, just to highlight, we've got Mainu sitting deep, we've got the right winger sitting on one flank, left winger dropping in. Similar to how City do it, similar to how Arsenal do it. This is a much better pressing structure. When you've got someone of the pace and mobility of Ugarte, it's going to allow you to win those balls back high up the pitch. And if that doesn't happen, let's say if he's bypassed in a sense of the 6 has slipped to the 8, having this structure, this almost like three-man midfield with the narrowness of the two wingers, Ugarte simply just needs to jump back into that midfield line, and United, once again, are defensively set up well. They've got the bodies back, they've got 8 players back, 2 forwards up. It works, it makes a lot of sense. But let's go back to the build-up and talk Ugarte in the build-up, because this potentially is an area that is of some concern, I'd say, but when you consider Kobbie's skill set is very similar to Zaire Emery's, and those two worked really well together at PSG when they played together as double pivot, I don't really have many concerns, especially considering now United actually have a number of ball players at the back, with Martinez, with De Ligt, with Andre Onana. You've got players that can play through, but also Luke Shaw potentially coming back into the setup following his injury. You've got another player that can play football. What this means for United's build-up, what you want with Ugarte, he's the player that's likely to sit behind the opposition's number 10. He's the player that's basically a bit of a decoy to allow Mainu to maybe drop and get into that sort of half-back Toni Kroos position. Thinking United's build-up from those deeper areas, having someone like Mainu deep to get on the ball, and then him to play the balls through, play the balls wide, hit the likes of Fernandes. That's the role that you want with him in the team. He is this roaming playmaker. Think of him a little bit like Bernardo Silva. Bernardo Silva's a player for Manchester City that's so important because Bernardo can pick up the ball deep, he can pick it in between the lines, he can pick it at number 10, he can pick it in central midfield. That is the role of Mainu, next season when you're playing with someone like Ugarte. Ugarte is just a bounce option. That's all he is. He's a bounce option to fire it into his feet, him to lay the ball off, or alternatively fire into his feet, shipping it out wide. What also I'd like to see a little bit more of from an attacking perspective. Obviously, a high left back on the side, Rashford tucking in with Bruno Fernandes, but Diogo Dalot very much inverting, similar to what we saw with Hakimi, basically creating a shape for United where they can really build out from. Think as Mainu as the Frankie de Jong and Ugarte as maybe that holding, number 6 in a Edison Alvarez, let's say, a player that is a decent ball player, but a player that's used to bounce the balls in to then play forward. The up back through to take out their attacking midfield striker line and then get the ball into an area high up the pitch. With the progressive options that United have in these positions, we know that Martinez is very progressive. De Ligt likes to hit his passes with pace, either out wide to the winger or straight into the forwards' feet, or even over the top to forwards, which I think is going to be a massive asset for United. But Ugarte is not in the side to be the guy that's progressing the football. He's a bounce option. He's a retainer. He basically just balances out that midfield zone, allowing the likes of Mainu, Dalot, or the 2 centre-halves to progress the play. But let's have a look at another system that United have played, especially at the back end of the season, the kind of 4-2-4 structure with 2 kind of false 9s dropping off. Of course, we're looking at different forwards in this area. Joshua Zirkzee coming in as the striker, playing with Bruno Fernandes, very much off the lines. Ugarte partnering Mainu deep in midfield. Or alternatively, what Manchester United could do in these bigger games or games where you're playing a very physical opposition is throw Casemiro into the side. Casemiro still has not left Manchester United and could still be a good squad player next season, adding his experience, his tenacity, and hopefully getting back to the levels that we saw in his first season at Manchester United. So how United could maybe change this shape is throwing Mainu a little bit higher up, moving Bruno Fernandes wide, and basically throwing a double pivot in there of pure ball winning in Ugarte and Casemiro. That's an old school Man United midfield. That's a midfield that's got tenacity, that's got work rate and tackling. In fact, if we look at Casemiro's last good season, the 22-23 season, he won the ball back 5 times through tackles and interceptions. You throw in Ugarte's numbers to that, whereas last season at Sporting Lisbon, he managed nearly 7 per game. You've got 12 ball recoveries in defensive midfield through tackles and interceptions to play your Manchester Cities, to play your Liverpools, to play your Arsenals, and maybe even an Everton. So maybe throwing Casemiro into those games as well, and allowing him to be the guy that's going to drop into the defensive line line, being arguably like a third centre-back. Again, Ugarte being that bounce option would work quite well. You've still got the creativity of Bruno Fernandes, Kobbie Mainoo inside, and also Diogo Dalot could probably provide the width on the right wing, and maybe Luke Shaw providing that similar option on the left at certain times. But having Casemiro and Ugarte in the same team makes quite a bit of sense. Of course, from a financial perspective, you know, Casemiro's wages are very, very high, but I'm not massively against keeping him for one more year if the right transfer fee doesn't come in. And finally, let's have a look at one final option. That is throwing a lot of central midfielders in Manchester United's team. Throwing Mason Mount as a number 10 and continuing Bruno Fernandes from that right-hand side, allowing Mainoo and Ugarte to play at the base. That is a team that could overload any midfield. You're thinking they arguably have like 5 players in the centre of the park to overload the opponents. Something that United could improve under Erik ten Hag is that overload and that ball retention in those central midfield areas. When you've got a Xerxes, a Mount, a Fernandes, a Mainoo and Ugarte, there isn't many teams that are going to take the ball off that central midfield. This is a pure ball-playing option. You know, you've got a fullback high in Diogo Dalot and Marcus Rashford, but very much you're overloading the opponents in that central area, throwing Mason Mount as an option in that midfield zone. And I think with Mason Mount as well, the interesting side about his game is he could also partner Ugarte deep. Mason Mount's got pretty good defensive work rate, allowing Manchester United once again to field a number of different setups, a number of different systems, getting a real ball player deep. Again, Mason Mount's a player that's a pass and move player that's going to break the line, that's going to get United into the final third. One final thing with Ugarte, one thing that we've not really mentioned is his long passing is very good. In terms of long pass accuracy, ranks in the top 3% of central midfielders in Europe's top 5 leagues. So not only is he a perfect ball winner, but he's also got that ability to play the switch at the right time. So does Ugarte to Manchester United actually make sense? For me, it's an unconditional yes. Ugarte's prowess in a defensive sense would improve Manchester United's pressing structure, but also their ability to deal with counter-attacks and sustain pressure. United have lacked a real mobile central midfielder for a while now, probably since Fred left, and Ugarte will give Erik ten Hag the ability to not only play him, but also Casemiro in the big games in central midfield, making United horrible to play against. Ugarte will add bite in midfield, but also that ability 1v1 to win the ball. I think that's going to massively improve United. When you're looking at his profile, the things that he might need to improve, of course, is in playing forward without any pressure. I think he's very good in tight situations, but that sort of weakness can be improved with Erik ten Hag and coaching. I do think Ugarte would be a good signing for Manchester United. But anyway, guys, get into the comments below. Does Ugarte to Manchester United make sense? I've been Statman Dave. Subscribe if you're new. We'll see you later.
Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, why not check out some more content on the Statman Dave YouTube channel?